Hello everybody, my name is Kaylin King, and on this channel I tell interesting or scary Reddit stories that I found online. This is a safe space to enjoy stories of the unknown. If you have any stories you'd like to share with me of your own, you can contact me on Instagram or even post on the channel's separated page, the link down below in the description. But for now, enjoy the video. My husband and I visited the Haunted Museum in Vegas. We upgraded to the RIP tickets, and we were the only ones in the tour group that had upgraded. So part of the upgraded experience is you get to go down to the basement. I was excited to go down, but nervous that it was just my husband and I going down. I started to go down the stairs, followed closely by my husband. I got to the first doorway to the little hallway, and I immediately was overwhelmed with an uneasy, negative feeling. Everything in my body told me to turn around and run back up the stairs. I ignored that and started down the little hallway to the room with the pentagram on the floor. The uneasy feeling kept getting worse and worse, and I felt like something was watching me. I got to the doorway of the room with the pentagram, and I just had the gut feeling to turn around and run. I turned around and looked at my husband to tell him I wanted to go back upstairs, and when I turned to look at him, I saw standing right behind him a figure dressed in a hooded black cloak. I know my eyes weren't playing tricks on me, because the figure was as clear and solid looking as my husband. I also have seen many spirits in my life to know this was one. I closed my eyes and ran back down the hallway and up the stairs. I returned to the museum a couple months later and went back downstairs to the basement. I didn't have the uneasy feeling and didn't experience anything else in the basement. I spent many years stationed in Germany. I did 2 years tours mostly, and each was in a different place. This occurred while I was stationed in Kitzenden, Larsen Barracks. That base was flanked by forest. There was an old abbey located a couple miles away through the forest and was said to be haunted. A couple of other guys in my company were interested in ghosts also. We had investigated a few of the castles around the general area, so when we heard about this place, it was a no-brainer. Our plan was to set out Friday, after last formation, and make the hike and set up camp. We slept that night, and the next morning we went to the abbey. It had been closed for years, but it was open during the day for tours. After it closed for the day, no one was supposed to be on the grounds, but that was not enforced nor patrolled. It was basically left open. Upon arriving, we took the tour and learned the history and layout. Around noon, we went back to the camp to fix some lunch and relax before ghost hunting around 10 p.m. When we reached the camp, it was destroyed. It appeared that some kind of animal had gotten into everything. It threw all our personal stuff from our backpacks all over, tore down our shelter halves, and basically just made a big mess without destroying anything. We cleaned up and reset the camp. None of our food was missing, but that wasn't surprising since most of our food was in cans. Surprising was the couple boxes of crackers and a loaf of bread had not been taken or damaged. Around 10 p.m. that night, we went back to the abbey. We investigated it thoroughly inside and out. We never heard or saw a thing. We stuck it out until around 4 a.m., hoping something might show up, but nothing did. We made our way back to the camp, disappointed and tired. When we got there, that animal had been back. It had done the exact same thing as before, except this time, those boxes of crackers and loaf of bread were scattered around like everything else, out of the wrappers and on the ground. We were pretty pissed off. If we had been able to see, to hike out, we would have, but those woods were too dark. Once again we cleaned up, and about an hour before it would start getting light out, we crashed for a few hours. 2 hours later I was startled awake by one of the guys yelling and cussing up a storm. Camp was trashed again, and we had slept through it. Even our shelter halves had been ripped down as we slept under them. The only difference was that our personal items, socks, underwear and t-shirts, were made into a trail leading out of the camp. We packed up everything and started following the trail of clothing. When we reached the last of it, there was a small pile consisting of one pair of underwear belonging to each of us, and the crotch had been ripped out of each one. About 100 away we could see the perimeter fence to our base. I never went back into that forest the rest of the time I was stationed there. I was about 10 years old. Back then, my friends and I would ride our bikes as far as we could, looking for adventure or to discover something new and exciting. As this time, my community was a mix of new and old, and it was easy to find an old tunnel, the remains of a farmhouse, or decayed paths and trails. We set out that summer day with one extra boy than the usual crew. I had not formally met him yet. Nonetheless, we headed out on our bikes. We came across an abandoned house near a farmer's field and forest. We started to explore the premises, and we decided to settle here for a while. We walked in, checked a few things out, and were just hanging out and sharing our findings. I started to hear the sound of rocks or gravel being moved through water, like a slurry, emanating from the basement. I thought it was my friends playing in the house. I briefly ignored this. Suddenly, there was wailing, and the sound of gravel was getting louder, like thrashing, like someone was throwing rocks or gravel. Frozen. There was no way my friends couldn't make that noise. Quiet, fast talking surrounded us. My one friend started to cry uncontrollably. His brother, a warrior-type kid, was preparing to protect his brother. Together we could see inside the house's front hall and stairwells. The new boy was giggling and gesturing us to come downstairs by waving us with his hand. We stood there dumbfounded. How or what? How did he not know the immediate danger we were in, that he was in? I wanted to get to him as I thought this was probably his last moment on earth. But I watched him return from up the dark stairwell, leading to the basement. He was still giggling and mirroring the exact same motion. He returned again downstairs and out of sight. We screamed at him, but he kept doing the exact same thing over and over again. He was actually speeding up like 2 times then 3 times faster. The noises from the basement I can only describe as pure despair, like an agonizing, painful, doom-like quality. But they were human, or at least human-like. We screamed at the boy that we were leaving, and it seemed like he was coming outside. Frantic, we just started biking as fast as possible, petrified with fear. I couldn't look back. It was dusk now, and we had no time to reconvene. We separated immediately and went home before we were grounded. I asked my friends the next day if anyone saw the other boy. They responded they thought he was someone else's friend from our group. We didn't even know his name or where he came from, and we never saw him again. So this is a story my dad told me. He just got back to the US from being stationed in Japan, and he was staying at his parents' house in Mississippi. The house was built in the early 90s and is up on stilts. So the way the house is laid out is basically a long hallway into the living room, so you can look from one end of the house and see the other side. My dad was staying in the middle room and woke up one night having to use the bathroom. He stepped out into the hallway, rubbing his eyes, and looked down the hallway. He has always been the type of person to be super aware of his surroundings, so he always did this. Well, this time he saw a black shadow leaned over the fireplace. He thought that it was someone that broke into the house. The shadow stood up and immediately charged at him super fast. His first thought was they broke in and is about to attack him, so he drop-kicked it. But it went through him and he hit the floor, causing the entire house to shake and made a loud sound. He was so confused. What just happened? And then my grandfather walked out of his room and was like, what the hell happened? My dad stood up and just said he slipped and fell. And that was that. I know on the property of 80 acres they own there is Indian mounds, and we have found arrowheads and skinning rocks. That was the first of many experiences there. My team was contacted by a writer who claimed to be experiencing a haunting from one of his lead characters. The haunting was witnessed by multiple people, including his wife, children, 4 neighbors, and his mailman. The main haunting was centered around the writer, who we felt had put himself in character too much. This is a fairly common occurrence when someone is constantly working on developing a character, be it an actor, writer, or a person who overly identifies with a fictional character. What was strange was that first the family, then friends and neighbors, and finally the postman met the character. The writer began having the experience of the character, which we will call Don, actually talking to him and helping him with the book. He said that Don provided information such as looks, traits, and how he would respond in a given situation. All of that can easily be explained by the writer getting too much into the character and losing his personal perspective. Where it got strange was when the writer's wife and children began to experience Don in real-life situations. The wife met Don at the grocery store when he approached her and began flirting. She met him again in a coffee shop and he bought her a coffee. She told her husband about this, and of course, he asked the normal questions. How old is he? What does he look like? And more along the same line. Upon hearing her answers, he took her to his computer and showed her the same information about Don as she had just revealed. The children were next to meet Don. It happened at the park, and Don purchased ice cream for several of the children there. We were able to verify this through the kids and two parents who were present and gave permission for him to pay for their kids' ice cream as well. One of the parents had an extended conversation with him about current events. The neighbors asked the writer how long Don would be visiting out of the blue. Evidently, Don had met them out in their yard and accepted when they invited him over for coffee. He had introduced himself as an old friend of the writers from college. While having coffee, he had even shared anecdotes from their college days, including what a player the writer was and what a nice car that he had. The information turned out to be accurate and was somewhat embarrassing to the writer. Finally, the mailman mentioned to the writer's wife that Don had offered him a cold bottle of water the previous day when he delivered their mail. With all of this adding up, the writer called us to investigate. As stated, we were able to verify all of this through first-person interviews. We conducted a complete investigation with no results. We performed a second investigation in the home with the writer present and did get some rather strange results. We all heard Don call the writer from the computer room while we were all in the living room. We got anomalous readings on the Mel meter as well as fluctuations in temperature. At one point, we all smelled clove cigarettes, which Don smoked in the book. Nothing was conclusive though as to what exactly the phenomenon was that we were dealing with. It continued for 7 months after we were notified, during which time we conducted 3 more investigations and interviewed everyone who reportedly had an experience with Don. All phenomenon came to an abrupt halt when the writer, out of sheer desperation, killed off Don in the book. There have been no experiences or signs of Don since. Around 8 last night, my husband and I were in our 3-year-old's room. The 1-year-old was asleep in his room across the hall. My son was playing with his train table and we were hanging out. He ran into the hall with a toy helicopter and was rescuing toys. He was right outside the door. He took off to come back in his room and immediately stopped and looked up as if an adult was in the doorway. My husband asked him what he was doing. Our toddler said, "A ghost." I then said, "Huh?" He says, "A ghost trapped me." I then asked, "Is it blocking the doorway?" He said, "Yeah, it is, Mom." He was still frozen, standing, staring up as if it was a real-life person there. I never sensed anything or saw anything, but that doesn't mean he didn't see it. We all said, "In the name of Jesus, leave our house." We told him it can't hurt him, and to never let it keep him from doing something. It infuriated me because whatever it was trying to keep him from coming to us. With a little bit of cheering, he ran into the room. We played some more, but I saw him keep stopping and staring over that direction. He did go to bed with no issues. And that's the end of that video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like, subscribe, and don't forget to comment which of these stories you found fascinating. If you'd like to support the channel in any way, you can find those links down below. If you'd like to buy my book, it is available down below with a few links. But until next time, bye bye.